The wolves had not allowed anyone to touch them in 100 years. Not kings. Not queens. Not warriors. Not even the descendants of the Alpha King's own bloodline. The 7 ancient wolves were more than guardians. They were legends. Living symbols of power. Creatures so old that no one remembered who had first tamed them. Entire generations had grown up hearing stories about the sacred beasts that slept high within the Frostfang Mountains. Anyone foolish enough to approach them was met with snarls that could freeze the blood in their veins. Yet, everything changed because of a single slip. A frightened Omega servant carrying a bundle of firewood lost her footing on an icy path. The wood scattered across the snow. Gasps erupted from the guards nearby. Because Elara Ashwood had fallen directly in front of the wolf's den. The largest wolf emerged first. Massive. Silver. Terrifying. The beast approached her slowly. Every witness expected violence. Expected blood. Expected death. Elara squeezed her eyes shut. But instead of claws, she felt warmth. When she opened her eyes again, the giant wolf had lowered its enormous head into her lap. A second wolf appeared. Then a third. Then all 7. One by one, the ancient guardians curled around the trembling Omega. And before the stunned kingdom could understand what they were seeing, the wolves fell asleep in her arms. The mountain became silent, because the wolves never made mistakes. And if they had chosen an Omega, then the kingdom's greatest secret had just awakened. Unfortunately for Elara, someone else witnessed the miracle. Someone who would do anything to make sure she disappeared before sunrise. Elara Ashwood had spent her entire life being invisible. As an Omega, she existed at the bottom of the kingdom's hierarchy. She cleaned floors, carried supplies, prepared food she was never allowed to eat, and endured insults from wolves who considered themselves superior. By 22 years old, she had learned an important lesson. Nobody came to save Omegas. Especially not beautiful kings. Especially not destiny. That morning had begun like every other. Before sunrise, she was already hauling bundles of firewood toward the mountain lodges used by royal hunters. The cold sliced through her thin cloak. Snow crunched beneath her boots. Her fingers burned from carrying the heavy load. Still she continued climbing. Because stopping meant punishment. And punishment in Blackthorn Kingdom was never gentle. Halfway up the trail she heard voices. Royal guards, nobles, hunters. A crowd had gathered near the forbidden mountain ridge. Curiosity tugged at her. She rarely saw nobles outside the palace. As she approached, she noticed everyone staring toward a dark cave carved into the mountain. Her heart skipped. The wolves' den. The sacred guardians. She should have turned around immediately. Instead she slipped. Ice cracked beneath her boot. The world tilted. Firewood exploded from her arms. She crashed face first into the snow. Directly in front of the cave entrance. A collective gasp echoed behind her. Panic flooded her chest. Then came the growl. Whoa. Ancient. The sound seemed to vibrate through the mountain itself. Elara slowly lifted her head. Golden eyes stared back at her. The largest wolf she had ever seen stood only a few feet away. Silver fur shimmered beneath the winter sunlight. Massive muscles rolled beneath its coat. Its teeth looked capable of crushing stone. She froze. Everyone froze. No one moved. The wolf stepped forward. Then another step. Then another. Death was coming. She knew it. Tears gathered in her eyes. For the first time in years she thought about her mother. The woman who had died when Elara was only 10. The only person who had ever truly loved her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The wolf stopped. Its ears twitched. Then something impossible happened. The beast lowered itself onto the snow. Slowly, carefully, and rested its enormous head against her knee. The crowd erupted. Screams. Confusion. Nobody understood what they were witnessing. Elara barely understood it herself. The wolf's warm breath drifted across her skin. There was no hostility. No aggression. Only peace. Then another wolf emerged. Black fur, blue eyes, equally enormous. It approached and curled beside her. The third arrived moments later. Then the fourth. Then the fifth. Within minutes, all 7 sacred wolves surrounded her. Not threatening, protecting, leaping. Elara sat motionless as the ancient guardians rested against her. The impossible scene spread through the kingdom before sunset. Servants whispered. Merchants gossiped. Soldiers abandoned duties to discuss the miracle. By evening everyone knew her name, including the Alpha King. Kale Blackthorn stood atop the palace balcony overlooking the kingdom. The cold wind pulled at his dark cloak. Below him, thousands of lights flickered throughout the city. Normally such beauty brought him peace. Tonight his thoughts remained elsewhere. An Omega. The wolves had chosen an Omega. That made no sense. The wolves rejected everyone. Even him when he was younger. It had taken years before they accepted his presence. Yet they had accepted her instantly. Why? The question haunted him. Behind him, Luna Serafina stepped onto the balcony. Beautiful. Elegant. Dangerous. What troubles you? She asked softly. Kale remained silent. Serafina followed his gaze. I heard the rumors. His jaw tightened. They're more than rumors. For a moment, something dark flashed through her eyes. Something possessive. Something fearful. Then her smile returned. Surely there is an explanation. Kale wasn't so certain. Far above the kingdom, inside a modest servant's room, Elara stared at her trembling hands. Everything felt different. She should have been happy. For the first time in her life, people weren't looking at her with disgust. Yet something felt wrong. Because she remembered the wolves' eyes. They hadn't looked at her like an ordinary Omega. They had recognized her. As though they already knew who she was. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened. An elderly man stepped inside. Elder Magnus. The kingdom's oldest advisor. His expression was unreadable. You must leave the palace. Elara blinked. What? Magnus approached quickly. Fear lingered in his eyes. Genuine fear. You have no idea what you've awakened. Her stomach tightened. I don't understand. Magnus stared at her for several seconds. Then his gaze lowered to her wrist. The color drained from his face. Elara followed his stare. A strange silver symbol had appeared beneath her skin. Glowing. Moving. Alive. Magnus whispered a sentence that changed everything. The prophecy has begun. Before Elara could ask another question, a thunderous howl echoed through the kingdom. The sound came from the mountain. From the wolves. Every wolf in Blackthorn Kingdom answered. And at that exact moment, the largest ancient wolf descended from the mountain, walked through the crowded city, approached the palace gates, and knelt before Elara. The entire kingdom watched. And for the first time in 100 years, the sacred guardian bowed to someone. An Omega. And somewhere in the shadows, Luna Serafina made a decision. Elara Ashwood had become far too dangerous to keep alive. The moment the ancient wolf knelt before Elara, the kingdom changed. Not gradually. Not quietly. Instantly. By sunrise, every street in Blackthorn Kingdom buzzed with whispers. Merchants abandoned their stalls to discuss it. Servants exchanged rumors in palace corridors. Warriors argued in training yards. The sacred wolves had bowed to an Omega. An Omega. The very thought felt impossible. And impossible things frighten powerful people. Especially those with something to lose. Standing behind her bedroom window, Luna Serafina watched the city awaken beneath a gray winter sky. Normally she enjoyed watching her kingdom. Today she hated it. Because every conversation she overheard contained the same name. Elara Ashwood. Elara. 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 The name echoed through the palace like poison. Serafina's nails dug into the wooden frame. For 5 years she had stood beside Alpha King Kale. 5 years of loyalty. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years spent ensuring nobody threatened her position. Now a servant girl appeared from nowhere, and suddenly the kingdom couldn't stop talking about her. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter." A maid stepped inside nervously. "My Luna. The council has requested your presence." Serafina turned. "The council?" "Yes, my Luna." The maid hesitated. "They wish to discuss the Omega." Serafina's expression hardened. Course they did. Everyone wanted to discuss the Omega. She dismissed the servant and headed toward the council chamber. As she walked through the palace, conversations stopped. Eyes lowered. People sensed her anger. But fear was useful. Inside the council chamber, Kale stood beside a massive stone table. Several elders surrounded him. Maps covered the walls. Ancient records lay scattered across the table. They had been researching all night. Serafina immediately noticed something troubling. Kale looked interested. Not annoyed. Not skeptical. Interested. That was dangerous. Elder Magnus pointed toward an ancient manuscript. "There has never been a recorded case." Kale folded his arms. "None. None." Magnus shook his head. "The wolves have accepted alphas. Kings. Warriors." His voice lowered. "But never an Omega." Silence followed. Serafina carefully hid her concern. "What does it mean?" No one answered immediately. Finally Magnus spoke. "It means we are missing something." Kale's eyes narrowed. "What kind of something?" Magnus looked uncomfortable. "The kind hidden for generations." The room became silent. Serafina felt a chill crawl down her spine. Hidden. That word worried her. Because secrets had a habit of destroying people. Especially royal people. Kale eventually dismissed the council. As everyone left, Serafina remained behind. The moment they were alone, she approached him. "You seem unusually invested." Kale glanced toward her. "The wolves are invested. She's an Omega." The words escaped sharper than intended. Kale noticed. His gaze lingered on her face. "Does that bother you?" A dangerous question. Serafina smiled. "No. Lie. Perfect lie." Unfortunately, Kale had become very good at recognizing lies. Before he could question her further, a messenger burst into the room. "My king. What is it?" The messenger swallowed hard. "The wolves." Kale straightened immediately. "What about them?" "They've surrounded the servant quarters." The entire room froze. Minutes later, Kale arrived outside the servants' housing. A massive crowd had already gathered. And what he saw stunned him. All 7 ancient wolves rested around Elara's small building. Like guardians. Like soldiers protecting royalty. No one could approach. No one could enter. The wolves allowed only one person near. Elara. Standing at the center of the pack. Confused. Terrified. Alone. Kale found himself studying her. Not because she was beautiful. Though she was. Not because she was mysterious. Though she certainly was. But because she looked genuinely frightened. Most people would have exploited this attention. Most would have celebrated. Elara seemed desperate for it to stop. That honesty intrigued him. For the first time their eyes met. The world seemed to pause. A strange sensation rippled through Kale's chest. Brief. Powerful. Unfamiliar. Then it vanished. Leaving questions behind. Meanwhile, high above them, Serafina watched from a balcony. And saw everything. The way Kale looked at Elara. The way Elara looked back. The invisible thread connecting them. Fear exploded inside her. Not jealousy. Not yet. Fear. Because deep down she understood something nobody else did. Kale had never looked at her that way. Not once. That evening, Serafina began her investigation. She summoned spies. Servants. Guards. Anyone capable of gathering information. She wanted everything. Elara's history. Friends. Family. Secrets. Weaknesses. Anything. Days passed. Reports arrived continuously. Most proved disappointing. Elara had no known relatives, no fortune, no political allies, no scandals, no hidden lovers, nothing useful. She appeared painfully ordinary. Yet the wolves disagreed, which meant somebody was lying. Late one night, another report arrived. Unlike the others, this one changed everything. Serafina unfolded the parchment. Her eyes scanned the page, then widened. The report described an incident from years earlier. Forgotten fire, a destroyed village, missing records, disappearing witnesses, one surviving child. Little girl. The description matched Elara perfectly. Serafina read it 3 times. Something wasn't right. The records had been erased deliberately. Someone powerful had hidden Elara's past. Why? The answer remained frustratingly out of reach. But Serafina sensed danger. Real danger. And danger had to be eliminated. The next morning, rumors began spreading through the kingdom. Small rumors. Carefully crafted. Impossible to trace. Elara was manipulating the wolves. Elara practiced forbidden magic. Elara had bewitched the Alpha King. Elara carried cursed blood. The stories traveled quickly. Fear always traveled faster than truth. Within days, suspicious glances replaced admiration. Whispers followed Elara everywhere. Servants avoided her. Guards watched her closely. The kingdom slowly turned against her. Exactly as Serafina intended. But despite everything, the wolves never left her side. Not even once. That fact infuriated Serafina. Because every lie she created collapsed whenever people saw the wolves protecting Elara. The sacred guardians trusted her completely. And sacred guardians did not trust monsters. One night, unable to sleep, Serafina ventured into the palace archives. A restricted section hidden beneath the castle. Few people knew it existed. Even fewer possessed access. Dust covered ancient shelves. Scrolls filled forgotten corners. Centuries of secrets slept in darkness. Hours passed. Then suddenly, he found it. Prophecy scroll. Ancient. Forbidden. Locked away generations ago. Her pulse accelerated. Carefully she unrolled it. The faded ink remained readable. As her eyes moved across the words, horror consumed her. The scroll spoke of a forgotten bloodline. A hidden heir. A woman chosen by the ancient wolves. Queen destined to unite the packs. And one line froze her blood completely. The wolves shall bow before the daughter of the first queen. Serafina's hands trembled. Whoa. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything she had built. Not after years spent securing her place beside Kale. The prophecy described Elara perfectly. The wolves, the mark, the impossible acceptance. Everything fit. Panic overwhelmed reason. Without hesitation, Serafina carried the scroll to a fireplace. Flames danced before her. For several seconds she hesitated. Then she fed the prophecy into the fire. The parchment curled, darkened, burned. Ash drifted upward. The evidence disappeared. Or so she believed. Because hidden in the shadows of the archive, someone had witnessed everything. Elder Magnus. And as Serafina walked away believing her secret was safe, Magnus stared at the remaining fragment of the prophecy still clutched in his hand. A fragment Serafina hadn't noticed. A fragment containing the most important line. The truth about Elara's bloodline. And somewhere else in the palace, a silver mark on Elara's wrist suddenly began to glow brighter than ever before. As though warning her. As though preparing her. Because forces older than the kingdom itself had begun to move. And before dawn arrived, someone would steal a second prophecy scroll. One containing a secret capable of bringing the entire kingdom to its knees. The silver mark on Elara's wrist refused to fade. By morning, it glowed beneath her skin like liquid moonlight. No matter how tightly she wrapped cloth around it, the light seeped through. She sat alone inside her small room, staring at the strange symbol. Fear twisted inside her stomach. Because the mark wasn't just glowing. It was changing. Thin silver lines slowly stretched outward from the center, forming patterns she had never seen before. Ancient patterns. Symbols that felt strangely familiar. As if some forgotten part of her recognized them. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could answer, the door opened. Elder Magnus stepped inside. His usually calm face looked exhausted. The old advisor hadn't slept. That much was obvious. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His hands trembled slightly. And for the first time since meeting him, Elara noticed something unexpected. The old man seemed afraid. Not of her. For her. He immediately locked the door behind him. "Show me." Elara swallowed. Without speaking, she unwrapped her wrist. The moment Magnus saw the mark, all color vanished from his face. His breathing stopped. His eyes widened. "No." The word escaped as a whisper. "What is it?" Elara asked. Magnus didn't answer. Instead, he sank into the nearest chair. For several moments he simply stared. Like a man watching a nightmare become reality. Finally he looked up. "Tell me something." "What?" "When your mother was alive. Did she ever speak about your father?" Elara frowned. The question felt strange. Painful. "My mother said he died before I was born." Magnus closed his eyes. "And did she tell you his name?" "No." Silence filled the room. The old advisor looked older than ever. Almost defeated. As if a burden he had carried for decades was becoming impossible to hide. Then suddenly, a deep howl echoed across the kingdom. The wolves. Every window rattled. Every bird fled the rooftops. Elara rushed toward the glass. Far below, the 7 ancient wolves stood together. All staring directly at the palace. Her. Waiting. Watching. The same way soldiers awaited orders from their commander. Magnus joined her at the window. His expression darkened. "They know." Elara turned. "Know what?" The old man remained silent. And that silence terrified her more than any answer could have. Because secrets powerful enough to frighten Elder Magnus were rarely harmless. Far across the palace, Luna Serafina received troubling news. Another prophecy scroll had vanished. Stolen. Hidden. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her desk. Impossible. She had destroyed the first scroll personally. She had watched it burn. Yet somehow another existed. Someone else knew. Someone else had seen the truth. And if that truth reached Kale, everything would collapse. For the first time in years, genuine panic crept into her heart. She needed answers. Immediately. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one searching. Because Alpha King Kale had begun his own investigation. The more he learned about Elara, the less sense her existence made. Records vanished wherever her past appeared. Names were missing. Dates altered. Entire sections erased. Someone had worked very hard to hide who she really was. Question was why. Standing inside the royal archives, Kale stared at stacks of ancient records. Hours passed. Then suddenly a discovery. A damaged ledger. Forgotten. Hidden behind dozens of other books. He carefully opened it. Inside lay a list of noble families destroyed 22 years earlier. One name immediately caught his attention. House Ashwood. His eyes narrowed. Elara's surname. Ashwood. The same name. According to the record, House Ashwood had perished in a mysterious fire. Every member supposedly died. Kale's heartbeat slowed. One line had been scratched out. Removed intentionally. There had been a survivor. Child. Page ended there. The survivor's identity had been erased. Someone didn't want anyone finding this information. Kale closed the ledger slowly. Questions multiplied. Answers remained frustratingly distant. Elsewhere, Elara wandered through the palace gardens. She needed air. A moment to think. Nothing felt normal anymore. The kingdom stared at her. The wolves followed her. The mark kept glowing. And now Elder Magnus seemed convinced she was connected to some terrible secret. Snow drifted gently from the sky. The gardens stood empty, silent, peaceful. For the first time all day she relaxed. Then she heard movement. A branch snapped. Elara turned. A figure emerged from the trees. Cloaked, hidden, watching her. Fear surged through her. The stranger approached slowly. Not threatening, careful. When he finally stepped into the light, she recognized him. Elder Magnus. Again. But this time he wasn't alone. Another person accompanied him. Woman. Very old. Her silver hair reached her waist. Her eyes glowed faintly gold. Immediately the wolves appeared. All 7. Surrounding the woman. Protecting her. Respecting her. The sight made Elara's skin crawl. Because the wolves treated this stranger almost the same way they treated her. The old woman smiled. You've grown. Elara froze. What? The woman stepped closer. I wondered if I'd live long enough to see this day. Confusion overwhelmed her. I don't know you. The woman's smile became sad. No. She touched Elara's cheek gently. But I knew your mother. The world seemed to stop. Elara's heart skipped. My mother. The woman nodded. Tears appeared in her eyes. She was one of the bravest women I've ever known. 1,000 questions exploded inside Elara. Before she could ask any of them, the woman grabbed her wrist. The silver mark flared. Brilliant light burst outward. The garden vanished beneath glowing energy. The wolves immediately lowered themselves onto the snow. Every one of them. Bowls pressed against the ground. Submitting. The old woman gasped. Magnus looked devastated. Because they had both just received confirmation. The mark was real. The prophecy was real. And Elara was at the center of it. The light faded. Silence followed. Then the old woman whispered 3 words. The blood survived. Elara stared. What blood? The woman looked toward Magnus. The advisor slowly nodded. After decades of silence. After decades of lies. The truth could no longer remain hidden. Magnus stepped forward. His voice trembled. 22 years ago, the royal family wasn't destroyed by accident. Elara's pulse quickened. What are you talking about? A coup. The word echoed through the garden. A massacre. Cold dread crawled through her body. Magnus continued. A royal bloodline vanished that night. The wolves watched silently. Snow continued falling. The world seemed frozen around them. And then Magnus looked directly into her eyes. The same eyes her mother once had. The same eyes another queen once possessed. A truth decades in the making finally escaped his lips. You are not an Omega by birth. Elara couldn't breathe. What? Magnus stepped closer. His voice barely rose above a whisper. The Ashwoods were not servants. The old woman began crying. The wolves lowered themselves further. Even nature seemed to hold its breath. Because one sentence was about to change everything. Magnus swallowed. Then spoke the words that shattered Elara's entire understanding of herself. You are royal blood. The world stopped. The snow. The wind. The wolves. Everything. Royal blood. Impossible. She was an Omega. A servant. Nobody. She had spent her entire life believing that. Yet the expressions around her contained no doubt. No uncertainty. Only truth. And before Elara could process the revelation, a black arrow suddenly exploded from the trees. Straight toward her heart. The old woman screamed. Magnus lunged forward. The wolves roared. But they were too late. Because someone hidden in the shadows had decided the lost heir must die before the kingdom learned the rest of the prophecy. The arrow tore through the air. Fast, silent, deadly. Elara never saw it coming. One moment she stood frozen beneath the falling snow, struggling to understand the truth Elder Magnus had revealed. The next, a massive silver blur slammed into her. The largest ancient wolf. Its enormous body knocked her backward just as the arrow sliced through the space where her heart had been. Instead of striking Elara, the black arrow buried itself deep into the wolf's shoulder. A horrifying howl exploded across the gardens. The beast staggered. Blood stained the snow. The other wolves erupted instantly. The mountain guardians transformed into living storms. Growls shook the earth. Trees splintered. Assassins hidden among the shadows suddenly screamed. One was dragged from the darkness. Another attempted to flee. A third never made it past the garden wall. Within seconds, the attackers were dead. But the damage had already been done. The wounded wolf collapsed beside Elara. Its massive body trembled. Dark blood spread across the snow. Tears filled Elara's eyes. No! The wolf lifted its head weakly. Golden eyes met hers. The creature gently nudged her hand, as if comforting her, as if reassuring her that everything would be all right. Then its eyes closed. The world seemed to stop. A deep pain twisted through Elara's chest. The wolf had protected her, sacrificed itself for her, and she didn't even know why. Moments later, palace guards flooded the gardens. Alpha King Kale arrived at their head. The sight before him stole his breath. Dead assassins, destroyed trees, blood everywhere, and Elara kneeling beside a wounded sacred wolf. His gaze darkened. What happened? Magnus stepped forward immediately. Someone tried to kill her. The king's eyes narrowed. Who? No one answered. 'Cause no one knew. At least not yet. But hidden behind a distant palace window, Luna Serafina watched the scene unfold. And for the first time since meeting Elara, fear truly entered her heart. The assassins had failed. Worse, they had failed publicly. Now Kale would investigate. Now questions would be asked. Questions she desperately needed buried. That night, Serafina acted quickly. She couldn't allow Magnus to speak. Couldn't allow the truth to spread. And most importantly, she couldn't allow Kale to learn who Elara truly was. So she created a new plan. Better plan. Crueler plan. One that wouldn't merely kill Elara. It would destroy her completely. 3 days later, the kingdom woke to shocking news. A royal vault had been robbed. Ancient relics were missing. Treasures worth fortunes had vanished. The palace erupted into chaos. Guards searched every room, every servant, every hallway. The investigation lasted all day. Then, just before sunset, the stolen relics were discovered. Hidden beneath Elara's bed. The accusation spread through the kingdom like wildfire. Servants gasped. Warriors cursed. Nobles demanded punishment. No one cared that the evidence seemed too convenient. No one cared that Elara insisted she was innocent. Fear always overpowered reason. By evening, she was dragged before the royal court in chains. The grand hall overflowed with spectators. Every seat filled. Every balcony crowded. People wanted to witness the downfall of the mysterious Omega. The same Omega the wolves had chosen. The same Omega now accused of betraying the crown. Elara stood at the center of the chamber. Alone. Humiliated. Terrified. The chains around her wrists felt heavier than iron. They felt like betrayal itself. Across the hall, Alpha King Kale sat upon his throne. Beside him stood Luna Serafina. Perfect. Elegant. Concerned. Flawless performance. Only Magnus seemed uneasy. The old advisor's face had grown pale. Because he knew exactly what was happening. And he also knew something worse. He possessed no proof. Only suspicions. The trial began. Witness after witness stepped forward. Each testimony damaged Elara further. Servants claimed they saw suspicious behavior. Guards described secret meetings. False evidence piled higher. Every lie strengthened the case against her. Elara listened in disbelief. Someone had planned this carefully. Every detail, every witness, every accusation. By the time the final testimony ended, the crowd had already decided her fate. Guilty. The word hung in the air before anyone spoke it aloud. Finally Kale rose from his throne. Silence filled the chamber. Every eye followed him, including Elara's. For a brief moment, hope appeared inside her. Because despite everything, despite the accusations, despite the fear, part of her still believed he would see the truth. Part of her believed he would help. Instead, Kale spoke words that shattered her heart. The evidence is overwhelming. The world blurred. Mo. Not him. Anyone but him. You stand accused of theft against the crown. His voice remained cold, controlled, distant. The punishment for such crimes is death. Gasps echoed through the hall. Elara felt her knees weaken. The crowd wanted blood. The nobles wanted blood. And now the king seemed willing to give it to them. Magnus stepped forward suddenly. My king! Kale raised a hand. The old advisor fell silent. Elara stared at him, waiting, begging, hoping. But Kale never looked away from the evidence. Never looked away from the lies. Never looked at her. Then something unexpected happened. A strange warmth spread through Elara's body. A sudden wave of dizziness followed. Her vision blurred. She nearly collapsed. Magnus noticed immediately. So did the old healer standing nearby. The healer's eyes widened. She stepped forward. My king! Kale frowned. What is it? The healer hesitated, then looked toward Elara. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, because the woman's expression had changed. Pure shock. My king! She swallowed hard. The Omega is pregnant. Silence exploded across the hall. Every sound vanished. Every movement stopped. Kale froze. The crowd froze. Even Seraphina stopped breathing. Pregnant. The word echoed through the room. Elara's own eyes widened. She hadn't known. Not consciously. But suddenly everything made sense. The exhaustion. The dizziness. The strange changes in her body. Her hand instinctively moved toward her stomach. Child. She carried a child. Then another realization struck. A far more terrifying realization. Only one wolf could be the father. Her gaze slowly lifted toward Kale. The king's face had gone completely pale. 'Cause he understood too. Months earlier, during a celebration honoring a military victory, fate had intervened. A rare moon ritual. An unexpected bond. One night neither of them fully understood. One night they had both buried beneath duty and confusion. Now the consequence stood before them. Live. Growing. Real. The court erupted into chaos. Voices shouted from every direction. Questions filled the air. Seraphina looked ready to tear the room apart. Kale couldn't speak. For the first time in years, the Alpha King looked completely lost. Then Elara did something nobody expected. She stepped forward despite her chains. Tears filled her eyes. Her voice trembled. Yet every word reached the farthest corners of the hall. The child is yours. The kingdom exploded. Chaos consumed everything. Nobles screamed. Warriors argued. Elders stood in shock. The king's heir. An Omega carrying the king's heir. Nothing could have been more dangerous. Nothing could have threatened Seraphina more completely. The Luna's beautiful mask finally cracked. Just for a moment. Hatred flashed openly across her face. Pure hatred. Deadly hatred. And Elara saw it. For the first time. She understood. Seraphina. It had always been Seraphina. The lies. The rumors. The trial. Everything. But realization came too late. Because the Luna had already prepared for this possibility. A second forged document was presented. Another false witness appeared. And within hours, the council reached a devastating conclusion. The child could not save Elara. The accusation remained. The sentence remained. Only the punishment changed. Death became exile. Permanent exile. Effective immediately. Elara would be cast beyond kingdom borders. Never allowed to return. Never allowed to claim her child. Never allowed to speak her truth. As guards approached her, she looked toward Kale one final time. Waiting. Praying. begging silently for him to stop this, to say something, anything. But Kale remained silent, bound by duty, blinded by deception. And that silence hurt more than betrayal itself. Because sometimes the deepest wound isn't caused by an enemy. It's caused by the person who should have stood beside you. As the palace doors opened and the winter storm raged outside, Elara felt something inside her break. Not her spirit, not her courage, something softer, something that had once believed in love. And as she was dragged toward exile, the silver mark on her wrist suddenly burst with light. The wolves began howling. The sky darkened. The earth trembled. As though the kingdom itself knew it had made a terrible mistake. A mistake it would one day regret. Because beyond those frozen borders, a rejected Omega carrying the king's unborn heirs was about to disappear into the darkness. And when she returned, nothing would ever be the same again. The kingdom gates closed behind Elara with a sound she would never forget. Heavy final sound, like a coffin lid sealing shut. Snowstorm winds howled across the frozen plains beyond Blackthorn Kingdom. The guards removed her chains, not out of kindness, because they believed she would die before sunrise. One of them even laughed. An Omega won't survive a week out here. The others agreed. Then they turned away, leaving her alone, pregnant, heartbroken, exiled. Elara stood motionless as the storm swallowed the kingdom behind her. For several seconds she simply stared at the massive gates, waiting, hoping, praying. Maybe Kale would come. Maybe he would realize the truth. Maybe he would stop this. Maybe. Nothing happened. The gates remained closed. No one came. No one called her name. No one fought for her. The final thread connecting her to Blackthorn Kingdom snapped. A strange calm settled inside her. Pain remained. Betrayal remained. But hope was gone. And sometimes losing hope creates something far more dangerous. Freedom. Without another glance backward, Elara stepped into the storm. The wilderness beyond Blackthorn borders was merciless. Mountains stretched endlessly. Frozen forests covered the land. Predators hunted constantly. Most travelers moved in groups. Only fools traveled alone. Or desperate women with nowhere else to go. For days she wandered. Food became scarce. Sleep became impossible. Her pregnancy advanced steadily. Each step hurt more than the last. Yet she continued, because stopping meant death. And now she wasn't fighting only for herself. She carried 2 lives inside her. Though she didn't know that yet. Only the wolves remained. Not all 7. 5. The wounded guardian remained behind to heal. Another stayed near the kingdom. But 5 ancient wolves followed her journey. Protecting her. Watching her. Guarding her through every danger. Whenever predators approached, they vanished. Whenever storms intensified, the wolves led her toward shelter. It was as if the ancient guardians had chosen exile alongside her. Weeks passed. Winter deepened. And somewhere inside Blackthorn Kingdom, Alpha King Kale tried desperately to convince himself he had made the right decision. Unfortunately, the wolves refused to help him. The sacred guardians no longer visited the palace. No longer protected the throne. No longer obeyed commands. Instead, they stared endlessly toward the northern wilderness. Toward Elara. Every day. Every night. The message was obvious. And Kale hated it. Because part of him feared the wolves blamed him. Part of him feared they were right. One evening, Kale climbed the mountain alone. The wolves' den stood silent beneath the moonlight. He hadn't visited since Elara's exile. Hadn't wanted to. The memories hurt too much. Yet something drew him back. As he entered the ancient cave, he noticed something unusual. The walls. Hundreds of carvings covered the stone. Ancient symbols. Ancient history. Stories older than the kingdom itself. His eyes moved carefully across them, then stopped. A familiar face stared back at him. Woman. Surrounded by wolves. Crowned. Powerful. Beautiful. Kale frowned. Something about the carving seemed familiar. Then realization struck. The woman looked like Elara. Not exactly, but close enough to send chills through his body. Before he could study further, a growl echoed through the cave. The wounded silver wolf emerged from the darkness. Its golden eyes locked onto him. The guardian approached slowly, then stopped. Not beside him, not before him, but between him and the carving, blocking his view, as if protecting the secret. Kill stared. The wolf stared back. And for the first time in his life, the sacred guardian turned away from him. Rejection. Pure and simple. The realization struck harder than any weapon. Meanwhile, far beyond the kingdom, Elara collapsed. The pain arrived suddenly, violently. She had been crossing a mountain pass when the first contraction struck. Her knees buckled instantly. A second followed, then a third. Fear exploded inside her. Whoa, not now. Not here. The storm intensified. Snow blinded her. Wind screamed across the mountains. He tried walking. Couldn't. The pain became unbearable. One of the wolves immediately moved closer. The massive silver guardian nudged her gently, then began leading her toward a distant cliffside. Elara followed. Barely. Every step felt impossible. Finally they reached a hidden cave. Warm. Just as another contraction nearly brought her to the ground. Hours passed. The storm raged outside. Inside the cave, Elara fought for survival. Alone. No healers. No midwives. No family. No king. Only the wolves. They remained nearby throughout the night. Silent guardians. Watching. Waiting. Protecting. Then just before dawn, the first cry echoed through the cave. Baby. Teeny. Healthy. Alive. Tears filled Elara's eyes immediately. She cradled the infant against her chest. Son. Beautiful. Perfect. Relief flooded her. Until another wave of pain struck. Confusion followed. Then realization. Another child. Hours later, a second cry filled the cave. Daughter. Twins. Elara stared at them in disbelief. Two tiny miracles. Two reasons to keep fighting. Two pieces of her heart she would protect forever. Outside, the storm finally ended. Sunlight touched the mountains. For a brief moment peace existed. Then the wolves growled. Every one of them. Instantly. Danger. Elara's pulse quickened. Movement echoed outside the cave. A step. Several. Armed. The wolves positioned themselves at the entrance. Protective. Aggressive. The first man appeared moments later. Then another. Then 6 more. Warriors. Assassins. Their armor carried no kingdom symbols. But Elara recognized them anyway. Blackthorn soldiers. Sent to finish what Exile had started. Panic surged through her. She pulled the newborns closer. The lead assassin smiled coldly. There she is. The wolves snarled. The men hesitated. Fear flickered across their faces. Even trained warriors feared the sacred guardians. But orders were orders. Weapons appeared. The cave filled with tension. One wrong move would trigger bloodshed. Then suddenly, a roar thundered through the mountains. Not a wolf. Not human. Something in between. Every assassin froze. A shadow exploded from the forest. Vast. Brutal. Terrifying. The first warrior hit the ground before he could react. The second followed seconds later. The remaining assassins barely drew their swords. The battle ended almost instantly. When the snow settled, only one figure remained standing. Massive alpha. Guard. Powerful. His silver eyes glowed beneath the morning sun. The stranger surveyed the battlefield calmly, then looked toward Elara, toward the twins, toward the wolves. Something unusual flashed across his face. Recognition. Not surprise. Recognition. As though he had been expecting this moment. The alpha approached slowly. The wolves did not attack. A shocking detail. Instead they stepped aside, allowing him passage. Elara tightened her hold on the children. Who are you? The stranger knelt before her, then spoke words that changed everything. My name is Darius. His gaze shifted toward the twins, then toward the glowing mark on her wrist, and finally back to her eyes. For several long seconds, he remained silent, as though confirming a suspicion decades old. Then he smiled slightly, smile filled with secrets. The North has been waiting for you. Outside the cave, the mountains seemed to awaken. And far away, inside Blackthorn Kingdom, the first cracks in Kale's perfect world had already begun to spread. Because the Omega he had abandoned wasn't dying. She was surviving. And destiny had finally found her. The North was unlike anything Elara had ever seen. It wasn't a kingdom. It wasn't a pack. It was something older. Something wilder. Towering mountains pierced the clouds. Frozen rivers cut through endless valleys. Ancient forests stretched beyond the horizon. And hidden among those untamed lands lived wolves who bowed to no king. For generations, they had remained separate from Blackthorn Kingdom. Many believed they no longer existed. Many believed they were myths. They were wrong. As Alpha Darius guided Elara through the northern territories, entire settlements emerged from the wilderness. Warriors, hunters, families, pack leaders. They all stopped what they were doing whenever she passed. And every single one stared at the silver mark glowing beneath her skin. Not with fear. With recognition. That frightened her more than hatred ever could. The first time she entered Darius's stronghold, hundreds gathered. The fortress stood carved directly into a mountainside. Massive, ancient, powerful. Elara expected suspicion. Instead, silence greeted her. Complete silence. Then an old woman stepped forward from the crowd. She dropped to one knee. Others followed. Then dozens more. Within moments, hundreds knelt. The sight stole Elara's breath. What are they doing? Darius remained calm. They remember. Remember what? His silver eyes met hers. A promise. That answer only created more questions. But before she could ask, the crowd began chanting. Softly at first, then louder, stronger. The same words repeated again and again. The blood has returned. The blood has returned. The blood has returned. A chill crawled through Elara's body. Because somehow, they weren't talking about her. They were talking about something inside her. Something she still didn't understand. Months passed. For the first time since Exile, Elara found peace. Not complete peace. The scars remained. The betrayal remained. The memories remained. But her children changed everything. Rowan and Lyra became the center of her world. The twins grew quickly. Too quickly. By their second year, unusual signs appeared. Strange signs. Impossible signs. One afternoon, Elara found Rowan sitting beside a wounded wolf pup. The animal's leg had been badly injured. The bone broken. The pup should have been screaming in pain. Instead, it slept peacefully. Confused, Elara approached. Then she noticed Rowan's tiny hands glowing silver. The same silver as her mark. The same silver as the ancient wolves. As she watched, the injury began healing. Before her eyes, the bone repaired itself. The wound vanished. The pup stood. Healthy. Whole. Alive. Elara's breath caught. That wasn't normal. Not even among werewolves. Meanwhile, Lyra displayed abilities of her own. Far more unsettling abilities. One evening during dinner, she suddenly froze. Her small eyes widened. Then she whispered something impossible. Visitors. Darius frowned. What visitors? The little girl pointed toward the mountains. 3 riders. Silence followed. Because no riders were expected. Yet 2 hours later, exactly 3 riders arrived. Every detail matched. Number. The direction. Timing. Everything. Darius looked at the child differently after that. So did everyone else. Because Lyra wasn't guessing. She was seeing. Years continued passing. And with every season, the twins grew stronger. Stronger than anyone anticipated. Stronger than anyone believed possible. Meanwhile, Elara transformed. The frightened Omega disappeared. The woman who emerged in her place surprised everyone, including herself. He trained daily. Swordsmanship, combat, leadership, strategy, politics. Darius taught her everything he knew. And Darius knew a great deal. Because the mysterious Alpha carried secrets of his own. He never spoke about his past. Never discussed how he knew so much about her bloodline. Never explained why the Northern Wolves trusted him completely. But one thing became clear. He wasn't preparing her to survive. He was preparing her to rule. At first, Elara resisted. She wanted no throne, no crown, no kingdom. All she wanted was peace. But peace proved impossible. Especially when reports from Blackthorn Kingdom began arriving. The kingdom was weakening. Pack disputes increased. Trade routes collapsed. Border conflicts intensified. The sacred wolves no longer protected the crown. The people whispered. The nobles panicked. And Alpha King Kale seemed increasingly isolated. Every report carried the same message. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. As if the kingdom itself had lost its balance. One night, Elara stood alone atop a mountain ridge. Snow drifted around her. The stars burned brightly overhead. For years she had avoided thinking about Kale. Avoided remembering. Avoided feeling. Yet tonight memories returned. The trial. The rejection. The silence. Most painful of all. The hope she once carried. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. You still love him. Elara didn't turn. Darius approached quietly. The mountain wind tugged at his cloak. No. The answer came too quickly. Darius noticed. He always noticed. You hate him. Elara remained silent. The Alpha nodded. That's worse. She finally looked toward him. What do you want me to do? Darius studied her carefully. Nothing. Then his expression darkened. Because destiny already has plans. Before she could respond, a horn sounded throughout the fortress. An alarm. Urgent. Dangerous. Warriors rushed toward the walls. Elara immediately followed. By the time she reached the main gate, chaos had erupted. A group of northern scouts had returned. Bloodied. Wounded. Terrified. Their leader stumbled forward. We found them. Darius's eyes narrowed. Who? The scout swallowed. The Shadow Pack. Silence exploded across the courtyard. Fear spread instantly. Even experienced warriors looked uneasy. Elara frowned. She had never heard the name before. But everyone else clearly had. Darius's face hardened. How many? The answer chilled the air. Thousands. The fortress fell silent. Thousands. An army. A massive army. The scout continued. They've united under one leader. Another murmur swept through the crowd. Impossible. The Shadow Pack had remained fractured for generations. No leader had ever controlled them all. Till now. Darius's jaw tightened. Who? The scout looked directly at Elara. Then delivered the final piece of news. They're searching for the woman marked by silver. The courtyard erupted. Voices shouted. Questions spread. Fear multiplied. Elara felt her pulse quicken. Me. They're looking for me. But why? Before anyone could answer, Rowan suddenly stepped forward. His glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. The boy wasn't afraid. He looked angry. Very angry. Then he spoke. Words no child should have known. They're coming because they know who Mother is. Silence followed. Every warrior stared. Every elder froze. Darius slowly turned toward the boy. For the first time since meeting him, the Alpha looked genuinely shocked. Because Rowan's voice hadn't sounded like a child. It had sounded ancient. Older than the mountains themselves. Then Lyra stepped beside her brother. Her silver eyes glowed brightly. And together the twins spoke the exact same sentence. The exact same time. A sentence that sent fear through everyone present. The throne is waking up. A violent wind swept across the fortress. The wolves began howling. The mountains echoed. The silver mark on Elara's wrist burst with light. And somewhere far away, deep beneath Blackthorn Kingdom, an ancient chamber sealed for centuries suddenly opened, as though responding to her existence, as though recognizing its rightful owner. And while the North prepared for war, a messenger arrived carrying news that would shake the entire continent. The Northern Council had made a decision, a historic decision, one that had not happened in over 300 years. The Pax wanted a queen, and they had already chosen her. The day the Northern Pax crowned Elara, a storm swept across the continent. Not an ordinary storm, the kind old wolves whispered about, the kind ancient prophecies warned of. Thunder rolled across mountain ranges, lightning split the sky, and in Blackthorn Kingdom, the sacred wolves finally returned. But not to the palace, not to the throne, not to Alpha King Kale. They gathered outside the sealed royal archives. 7 massive guardians standing motionless beneath the rain. Watching, waiting, demanding. No one understood why. By nightfall word reached Kale. The Alpha King arrived immediately. The moment he stepped into the courtyard, the wolves turned toward him. Their golden eyes glowed unnaturally bright. For years those eyes had represented loyalty, protection, trust. Tonight they held something else. Judgment. Kale felt it instantly. A cold weight pressing against his chest. One of the wolves growled. Not threateningly. Disappointed. The sound hurt far more than anger ever could. What do you want me to see? The question escaped him quietly, as if he already knew the answer. The largest wolf turned and walked toward the archive entrance, then looked back. Waiting. Kale followed. Inside, dust covered everything. Ancient shelves stretched endlessly into darkness. The wolves led him deeper, past forgotten records, past sealed vaults, past history itself, until they stopped before a hidden wall. A section of stone concealed behind shelves. Kale frowned. He had spent his entire life inside this palace. Yet he had never seen this chamber. The wolves stared expectantly. Then the largest guardian slammed its paw against the wall. Stone cracked. Ancient mechanisms groaned. And slowly, a secret room revealed itself. Inside waited truths buried for 22 years. Kale stepped forward. His heartbeat accelerated. Portraits lined the walls. Royal portraits. Yet none belonged to the current dynasty. His eyes settled on one painting. Then another. Then another. Every breath became harder. Because the woman staring back from the largest portrait looked exactly like Elara. Not Elara herself. Someone older. Someone regal. Someone crowned. Queen. The resemblance was undeniable. Kale moved closer. Beneath the painting, faded words remained visible. Queen Elara Ashwood. The last daughter of the first bloodline. The room spun slightly. Ashwood. Elara Ashwood. The same name. The same eyes. The same face. The same silver mark carved onto the queen's wrist. No! The whisper escaped before he realized it. The wolves remained silent. Watching. Waiting. As the truth slowly destroyed everything he thought he knew. Hours passed. Kale searched every document, every record, every hidden journal, and piece by piece, the truth emerged. A royal massacre, a stolen throne, a surviving child, cover-up protected for decades, and one final document, the missing prophecy, the one everyone believed destroyed. His hands trembled as he read. The wolves shall recognize the blood of the first queen. The rightful heir shall rise from exile. The false crown shall fall. Each sentence felt like a blade. Because he finally understood. Elara had never been the threat. She had been the victim. The wolves had known. Magnus had known. Even destiny had known. Only Kale remained blind. And because of that blindness, He had destroyed the one person who trusted him. Far across the palace, Luna Serafina received terrible news. Kale had entered the hidden archives. Panic exploded inside her. Years of carefully built lies suddenly felt fragile. Dangerously fragile. She immediately headed toward the archives. Unfortunately, the wolves were waiting. All 7. Standing across the entrance. Motionless. Silent. Deadly. Serafina forced a smile. "You know me." No response. She stepped forward. The largest wolf growled. A deep, terrifying sound. Warning. The Luna froze. Shock flashed across her face. The wolves had never growled at her before. Never. Not once. She tried again. Another growl. Louder. Angrier. The sacred guardians weren't protecting her. They were rejecting her. The realization struck like lightning. Something had changed. Something irreversible. And for the first time in years, fear overwhelmed confidence. Because animals could not be manipulated. Animals could not be bribed. Animals could not be deceived. The wolves knew. Meanwhile, inside the archives, Kale continued reading. Each page deepened his guilt. Each revelation sharpened his regret. He finally understood why Elara had looked so broken during the trial. Why she had begged him with her eyes. Why her silence haunted him every night. Because she had been telling the truth. And he had chosen not to listen. A memory surfaced. Elara standing in chains. Pregnant. Terrified. Alone. Looking toward him one last time. Waiting. Hoping. Trusting. The memory nearly crushed him. Because he remembered exactly what he had done. Nothing. He had done absolutely nothing. The Alpha King lowered his head. For the first time since becoming ruler, he felt ashamed. Not as a king. As a man. Outside, rain continued falling. The storm intensified. And with it came another visitor. Elder Magnus. The old advisor entered quietly. He looked exhausted. As though carrying decades of guilt. Kale didn't look up. "Why didn't you tell me?" Magnus remained silent. "Answer me." The old wolf finally sighed. "Because your father made me swear." Kale looked up sharply. "My father?" Magnus nodded. The previous king knew the truth. The room became silent. A new wound opened instantly. "My father knew." "Yes." The answer hit harder than expected. Magnus walked toward the portraits. His expression grew distant. The old king protected the surviving heir. The child. Elara. Kale closed his eyes. Of course, everything always led back to her. Magnus continued. He feared enemies would finish what the coup started. So he hid her. Yes. The old advisor's voice broke. And I helped. The weight of history settled over both men. Generations of lies. Generations of stolen truths. Generations of suffering. All centered around one innocent girl. One Omega servant. One woman. Elara. Then Magnus revealed the final truth. The truth that shattered Kale completely. She survived exile. Kale immediately looked up. Hope appeared. Fragile. Dangerous. Where? Magnus hesitated. Then smiled sadly. Not only did she survive. The old advisor reached into his cloak. A folded parchment appeared. He handed it over. Kale opened it. The moment he saw the drawing, his world stopped. 2 children. Boy. A girl. Silver-eyed. Identical to him. His hands shook. Tears filled his eyes before he could stop them. Twins. His children. Alive. The son he never knew. The daughter he never held. Years stolen by his own mistakes. Kale stared at the image. Unable to breathe. Unable to think. Unable to look away. They're mine. Magnus nodded. Yes. Silence followed. Long. Painful. Devastating. The Alpha King finally understood the true cost of his choices. He hadn't only lost Elara. He had lost years. Years watching his children grow. Years protecting them. Years loving them. Years that would never return. Outside the archive, another howl echoed across the kingdom. The wolves answered immediately, one by one. 7 voices rising into the storm. Not mourning, not warning, pulling. Kale stepped outside. Rain soaked his clothes instantly. The wolves stared north, toward distant mountains, toward the woman they had chosen long ago. For the first time, Kale followed their gaze. And in that moment he made a decision. No matter how far away she was, no matter how much she hated him, no matter how impossible forgiveness seemed, he would find Elara. He would tell her the truth. He would kneel if necessary, beg if necessary, because some mistakes could never be erased. But perhaps they could be faced. Unfortunately for Kale, destiny had moved far beyond apologies. Because in the north, Elara now stood before thousands of wolves. A crown of silver rested upon her head. Ancient banners waved behind her. The sacred mark blazed like moonfire. And when the gathered packs bowed before her, the mountains themselves seemed to tremble. The Queen of the North had risen. And she was already preparing her return. Not for reconciliation. Not for forgiveness. For judgment. Because the kingdom that exiled her was about to learn a painful truth. The rejected Omega was gone. And the woman returning in her place could bring an empire to its knees. The first scouts arrived at Blackthorn Kingdom before dawn. They rode exhausted horses, covered in snow, faces pale with fear. The guards barely recognized them. The moment the scouts reached the palace gates, they shouted the same warning. The north is moving. Within hours the entire kingdom knew. The northern packs were marching south. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands, warriors, hunters, wolfes, entire clans. An army large enough to shake kingdoms. And at the center of that army rode a queen. Elara Ashwood, the Omega they had exiled. The servant they had humiliated. The woman they had tried to erase. Panic spread quickly. Markets emptied. Families barricaded homes. Nobles demanded answers. The council descended into chaos. Inside the throne room, Kale listened silently as commanders delivered reports. 5,000 warriors. Perhaps more. They'll reach the capital within 3 days. No one needed to ask who led them. Everyone already knew. The kingdom had spent years whispering stories about the Northern Queen. Stories of impossible victories. Stories of wolves obeying her commands. Stories of ancient powers awakening beneath her rule. Most dismissed those stories as exaggerations. Till now. Now the army stood at their borders. And reality felt far more terrifying than rumor. Meanwhile, Luna Serafina stood near the throne. Fear hid beneath her perfect expression. But Kale noticed. He noticed everything now. The lies. The manipulations. The small cracks hidden beneath her mask. The blindness that once protected her no longer existed. That frightened her more than the approaching army. Because she sensed the truth moving closer. And truth was dangerous. 3 days later, the northern army arrived. The sight stole the kingdom's breath. Thousands of warriors covered the plains outside the capital. Banners snapped in the wind. Wolves larger than horses prowled among the ranks. Ancient guardians stood at the front. The sacred wolves had returned. But they weren't standing beside Blackthorn Kingdom. They stood beside Elara. The message could not have been clearer. The people gathered along the city walls, watching, waiting, praying. Then the army parted. Path opened through the center. And Elara appeared. The crowd fell silent. No one recognized the woman approaching. Not completely. The frightened Omega was gone. In her place stood a queen. Silver armor shimmered beneath the sunlight. A cloak of white fur flowed behind her. A crown rested upon her head. Confidence radiated from every movement, every step, every breath. She no longer looked like someone seeking acceptance. She looked like someone who no longer needed it. Beside her rode 2 children. Boy. A girl. Both carried themselves like royalty. Both possessed silver eyes. And both seemed strangely familiar. The crowd began whispering. Recognition spread slowly. Then rapidly. Like wildfire. 'Cause everyone saw it. The children resembled Alpha King Kale. The realization struck the kingdom simultaneously. The heirs. The king's heirs. Alive. The gates opened. Not because anyone ordered them. 'Cause no one dared keep them closed. Elara guided her horse forward. The army followed. The city watched in stunned silence. Years earlier she had walked these streets in chains. Now she returned as conqueror. The difference felt almost unreal. Memories resurfaced with every step. The insults. The humiliation. Exile. The loneliness. For a moment old wounds stirred. Then she looked toward her children. The pain faded. Not because it disappeared. Because she had become stronger than it. At the palace entrance, the royal court waited. Commanders. Nobles. Council members. The same people who once demanded punishment. The same people who watched her trial. One by one their eyes lowered. Shame finally found them. Then the palace doors opened. Alpha King Kale emerged. The courtyard became silent. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Years of history stood between them. Years of mistakes. Years of regret. Kale looked older. Not physically. Emotionally. The weight of guilt had changed him. Elara noticed immediately. Unfortunately for him, guilt wasn't enough. Nothing could return what she lost. Nothing could erase exile. Nothing could restore broken trust. For several long moments, they simply stared at one another. Then Kale did something no one expected. The Alpha King lowered himself onto one knee. Gasps erupted across the courtyard. Nobles stared in disbelief. Commanders froze. The king. Kneeling. Not before a conqueror. Not before another king. Before the Omega he once rejected. Kale's voice carried through the silence. I was wrong. The words sounded painfully sincere. I failed you. No excuses. No justifications. Only truth. Elara felt something twist inside her chest. Not forgiveness. Something more complicated. Because part of her had once dreamed of hearing those words. Years ago. When they still mattered. Now they arrived too late. Kale continued. I failed our children. His gaze shifted toward Rowan and Lyra. Pain flooded his expression. The twins watched silently. Neither smiled. Neither approached. Because they had grown up without him. To them he wasn't a father. He was a stranger. And that realization hurt Kale more than any wound. Then movement erupted behind the crowd. Familiar voice screamed. Don't listen to her. Serafina. The Luna pushed forward desperately. Panic filled her eyes. Hatred twisted her features. Years of carefully maintained composure finally shattered. She's a fraud. No one reacted. No one believed her. That terrified her. So she grew louder. More desperate. More reckless. The throne belongs to us. The moment the words left her mouth, Elder Magnus stepped forward. He carried a wooden chest. Ancient. Sealed for decades. The old advisor opened it before the entire court. Inside lay documents. Records. Proof. The hidden history of the kingdom. The truth. One by one Magnus revealed everything. The massacre. The stolen bloodline. The forged records. The false accusations. The conspiracy. Each revelation struck harder than the last. The crowd watched in horror. Because every lie led to one person. Serafina. Every path. Every betrayal. Every manipulation. All roads led back to her. The Luna's face drained of color. For years she had controlled the narrative. For years she had controlled perception. Now reality stood exposed. And reality was merciless. No. The whisper escaped her lips. Magnus revealed the final piece of evidence. A written confession from one of the assassins. The same assassins sent after Elara during exile. Verified. undeniable. Seraphina staggered backward. The crowd turned. Not toward Elara. Toward her. Disgust replaced loyalty. Hatred replaced respect. Fear replaced admiration. For the first time she stood alone. Completely alone. Then something extraordinary happened. The sacred wolves approached. 7 enormous guardians crossed the courtyard. The kingdom watched nervously. Seraphina's eyes widened. Relief appeared briefly. Perhaps the wolves would protect her. Perhaps. The largest wolf stopped directly in front of her, growled, then turned away, choosing Elara, rejecting Seraphina publicly. The symbolism couldn't have been clearer. The kingdom erupted. Everything collapsed around the Luna. Her power, her influence, her lies. Destroyed before everyone she once controlled. Elara said nothing. She didn't need to. Sometimes revenge wasn't screaming. Sometimes revenge was simply surviving long enough to watch the truth reveal itself. Yet, the greatest shock still remained. Because Rowan suddenly stepped forward. The young boy's silver eyes glowed brightly. Then Lyra joined him. Ancient power surged around both children. The sky darkened. The ground trembled. Gasps echoed everywhere. The twins raised their hands. And for the first time publicly, they revealed what they truly were. Not ordinary heirs. Not ordinary wolves. Something far older. Something tied directly to the ancient bloodline. Silver light erupted across the courtyard. The sacred wolves immediately lowered themselves to the ground, bowing. Not to Elara. To the children. The kingdom stared in disbelief. Because if the wolves bowed to the twins, then the prophecy was far bigger than anyone imagined. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, an ancient throne sealed for centuries suddenly awakened. As if responding to their presence. As if calling them home. The final secret of the first queen was about to be revealed. And when that truth emerged, the future of every wolf kingdom would change forever. The moment the twins revealed their power, the entire palace shook. Not metaphorically. Literally. Stone cracked beneath the courtyard. Ancient walls trembled. Dust rained from the towers. Every wolf present lifted its head toward the sky. And then they howled. 7 sacred guardians. Thousands of northern wolves. Hundreds of kingdom wolves. Their voices merged into a single earth-shaking chorus. The sound rolled across the kingdom like thunder. Deep beneath the palace, something answered. A low rumble echoed from the foundations. The ground split. Ancient stone shifted. And before the stunned eyes of the entire court, a hidden staircase emerged from beneath the royal courtyard. Silence followed. No one moved. No one spoke. The staircase descended into darkness. Into history. Into secrets buried for centuries. Elder Magnus stared at it with tears in his eyes. The Chamber of Origins. The words escaped as a whisper. Kale frowned. You knew about this. Magnus nodded slowly. I knew it existed. His gaze shifted toward Elara. But only the rightful bloodline can open it. Every eye turned toward her. Toward Rowan. Toward Lyra. The truth felt impossible to ignore now. Prophecy. The wolves. The silver mark. Everything pointed in one direction. Elara stood motionless. Part of her wanted to walk away. Part of her wanted to leave the kingdom behind forever. But destiny had pursued her across mountains and years. It wasn't going to stop now. Slowly, she stepped toward the staircase. The twins followed. The sacred wolves rose immediately and moved behind them. Guardians escorting their queen. No one dared interfere. The descent felt endless. Ancient torches ignited one by one as they walked. As though unseen forces recognized their presence. The deeper they traveled, the older the architecture became. Walls carved with symbols. Statues of wolves. Images of forgotten queens. History hidden beneath history. Then they reached the chamber. The sight stole everyone's breath. A vast underground hall stretched before them. Massive pillars reached toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Silver crystals illuminated the room, and at its center stood a throne. Ancient, magnificent, untouched by time. The throne wasn't made of gold. It wasn't made of jewels. It appeared carved from moonlight itself. Silver energy pulsed through its surface. Alive, waiting. The moment Elara entered the chamber, the throne reacted. The silver mark on her wrist blazed. Light spread across the room. Ancient symbols awakened, one by one. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Not human, not wolf, something older, something powerful. The blood has returned. Gasps filled the room. The voice continued. The first queen's line endures. Images suddenly appeared in the air. Living memories, ancient visions. The entire chamber watched as history unfolded. A woman emerged from the light. Beautiful, strong, surrounded by wolves. She looked astonishingly similar to Elara. Not because they were related, because they were nearly identical. The woman approached the throne, and every wolf in the vision bowed before her. Magnus fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face. The first queen. The vision continued. The ancient queen spoke. Her voice carried across centuries. My descendants shall inherit more than a kingdom. The images shifted. Battles, wars, betrayals. Then came the revelation. The true revelation. The secret hidden for generations. The first queen had not merely ruled wolves. She had created the sacred guardians. Through a bond unlike anything the world had seen. Her bloodline carried that connection. Her descendants could command the ancient wolves. Protect the kingdoms. Unite the packs. Not through fear. Through destiny. The chamber fell silent. Because everyone finally understood. The wolves had never chosen Elara because they liked her. They had recognized her. Recognized their queen. Recognized their blood. Recognized their rightful ruler. Then the vision revealed something else. Something no one expected. The coup. The massacre. The destruction of the royal bloodline. Faces appeared. Names emerged. And among them stood a shocking figure. A man wearing royal colors. Kale's grandfather. Gasps echoed everywhere. The chamber froze. Even Kale looked stunned. Because the truth was far uglier than anyone imagined. The royal family had not merely hidden Elara's bloodline. Their ancestors had helped destroy it. The throne Kale inherited had never truly belonged to his family. Silence crushed the room. The weight of history settled upon every shoulder. Kale looked toward Elara. Pain filled his eyes. Because even his crown carried guilt. Even his legacy carried betrayal. Yet Elara said nothing. She simply stared at the visions. Watching generations of suffering unfold. Watching lives stolen. Watching destinies destroyed. And suddenly, everything made sense. Her mother's fear. The hidden records. The wolves. Exile. Prophecy. All of it. Then the chamber grew brighter. The first queen appeared once more. Her gaze settled upon Elara. And for the first time she smiled. My daughter. The words echoed gently, warmly, across centuries. Elara's eyes filled with tears. Because for her entire life, she had searched for belonging, for family, for identity. And now history itself welcomed her home. The vision extended a hand. Silver light surrounded Elara. The mark on her wrist transformed completely. The symbol expanded. Ancient, beautiful, royal. The true mark of the first bloodline. Then the vision spoke its final truth. A truth that stunned everyone. Including Magnus. Including Kale. Including Elara herself. The queen does not stand alone. The light shifted toward Rowan and Lyra. The twins stepped forward. Their eyes glowing brightly. The heirs carry gifts unseen for 1,000 years. Images appeared around them. Rowan healing entire armies. Lyra seeing possible futures. Powers long believed extinct. The chamber erupted in whispers. Because the prophecy wasn't ending. It was beginning. The first queen smiled once more. Then her final words echoed throughout the chamber. The age of division ends. The age of unity begins. And with that, the vision vanished. Silence followed. Long, powerful, transformative. No one remained unchanged. Slowly Elara turned. The chamber watched her. Thousands waited. The wolves waited. History waited. And for the first time she approached the ancient throne. No fear. No hesitation. No doubt. She sat. The moment she did, silver light exploded throughout the chamber. The sacred wolves lowered themselves immediately. Thousands of warriors followed. Then the nobles. Then the council. Then the people. One by one. Kneeling. Not because they were forced. Because the truth stood before them. The rightful queen. The blood of the first queen. The woman destiny had chosen. At the front of the crowd, Kale slowly lowered himself to one knee. Not as a king. Not as an alpha. As a man asking forgiveness. His eyes met hers. Neither spoke. Words felt too small. Too inadequate. Yet something changed. Not complete forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. The smallest possibility. Then Rowan approached. The boy hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Kale looked at him. His son. The child he never knew. Emotion overwhelmed him. Rowan stared for several seconds. Then slowly stepped closer. Lyra followed. The twins stopped before him. Silence stretched. Then Kale opened his arms. No demands. No expectations. Just hope. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then Rowan moved first. Single step. Then another. Finally the boy embraced him. Lyra joined moments later. Kale closed his eyes. Tears slipped down his face. Years of regret. Years of loss. Years of guilt. Released in a single moment. The reunion wasn't perfect. But it was real. And sometimes real mattered more than perfect. Meanwhile, guards dragged Seraphina into the chamber. Broken. Defeated. Alone. She stared at the throne. Elara. At everything she had lost. Hatred still burned inside her. But it no longer mattered. Her lies had died. Her power had died. Her future had died. History would remember her for one thing only. The woman who tried to destroy a queen. And failed. As the chamber settled into silence, the sacred wolves approached the throne. The largest guardian stopped before Elara. The same wolf that had rested its head in her lap years ago. The same wolf that saved her life. Slowly, the ancient beast lowered its head. Not in submission. In recognition. The others followed. 7 guardians. 7 legends. 7 witnesses to destiny fulfilled. And at that moment, the entire kingdom understood the truth. The wolves had never made a mistake. Not on the mountain. Not in the palace. Not in exile. They had recognized their queen from the very beginning. The Omega they mocked. The servant they ignored. The woman they betrayed. Had always been destined to rule. And as sunlight finally broke through the chamber above, a new era began. Not ruled by fear. Not ruled by lies. But by the queen the wolves had chosen 100 years too late. Years later, the story of Elara Ashwood became legend. Children grew up hearing tales of the Omega who changed the world. The queen who survived betrayal. The mother who protected her heirs. The ruler who united divided packs. Under her leadership kingdoms prospered. Ancient enemies became allies. The North and South stood together for the first time in history. Rowan grew into a healer unlike any before him. Lyra became the kingdom's greatest seer. And Kale spent the rest of his life earning the trust he once threw away. Not because destiny demanded it. Because love required it. As for the sacred wolves, they never left Elara's side. They followed her through every season, every victory, every challenge. Just as they had on the day everything began. The day a frightened Omega slipped on an icy mountain path. The day 7 ancient wolves fell asleep in her arms. The kingdom had called it impossible. History called it destiny. And the wolves had known all along.